This is part 2 of the stage 4 process. If you missed part 1, definitely go check that out first, where I describe what each of the different columns of stage 4 represent, what they mean, what type of data you should expect to be putting under each of these. But in this video, part 2 of stage 4, I'm going to be talking about how to actually perform the stage. And so this will be an example guiding you through how you should actually go through the columns from top to bottom of the page. And obviously you need to know what those columns are before you can begin doing that. So that's what stage part 1 covers. But in part 2, we'll actually discover the actual method of going through it. So let's jump in here. All right, so let me show you how to move through these columns and run stage 4. You've written out the headers, you understand what each of the columns represent, and you're ready to go. Well, where do you start? Where you start is in the top left-hand corner under sensory, and you're going to be progressing over and down. And so think of every new descriptor word that you write in your stage 4, you need to do a carriage return. And it's like what you do with an old typewriter. You hit enter and go to the next line for each word. And that's how you want to do it. You want to think of like there's a whole bunch of rows on this page and every word is one row. So what does that look like? Well, starting with sensory, you take the tip of your pen and you place it in whatever column you're ready and prompting your unconscious mind for data. And so you think of that tip of your pen touching the page as the prompt. It's like, okay, my pen is touching the page under the sensory column. Give me any sensory perceptive words. These can be colors, textures, sounds, smells, temperatures, doesn't matter what it is. Give me a string of those. And we refer to that actually as an information cluster. But what would that look like? Well, here's what that might look like. Putting the pen on the page and just letting it be spontaneous. What comes to mind? Well, I got the color red spontaneously. I got the color blue. I got the color gold. I got hot, warm, and loud. So see what I'm saying? You get every single word, it's one down. There's something you need to consider though, as you're progressing through stage 4 about how long you want to be spending in each one of these columns. Because the technique that I personally use is I put a little restraint on how long I spend in the session in stage 4. Because if you're in stage 4 for too long, what actually can happen is you lose connection with the signal line, which is, think of that as like the internet connection that's you have attached to actually the site that you're describing. And if you're in it too long, you may lose it and you may not even realize when you lost it. So think of it as saturating. The data saturates. So I put actually a little marker down here for myself. I don't actually put it on the page, but it's the 2/3 mark on the page right around here. And once I hit this point, this imaginary 2/3 mark on the page, I'm done. I stop. And because it's a little safeguard in place to prevent me from going too long, spending too much time in stage 4, and then actually hitting that saturation point and then going into imagination land without even realizing it. And so think of this as like a little safeguard. It's the 2/3 mark safeguard. And so what that means is that if you spend all of your time over here in the sensory column, writing all of your words, you're going to hit that 2/3 mark without even getting any of the other data that you finally have an opportunity to access in stage 4. And so what we call this is that the person or the viewer that stays just in the S&D columns for all of stage 4, what they're doing is it's called home, just like you're building a house there. You're creating a homestead for yourself over here in the S&D columns, which you do not want to do. You want to get some foundation poured, if you will, with S&D by a starting place, get some sensory, get some dimension, but then you want to start shifting it over into these other columns before you hit this 2/3 mark down the page. And so, as you can see, writing small helps, obviously, a little bit, but you don't want to just fill up the whole page with S&D. So let me actually backtrack here and show you what a full session would look like. I'm going to start in the S column. I'm going to get a couple sensories, a couple dimensions, and then I'm going to keep moving over. So I'm going to start in S. Just got red again, spontaneously, blue, black, and now I got round. Well, round is not a sensory. Round is a dimension word. And if you find yourself that you write a word in the wrong column, let's say because I'm just listening to whatever's coming up in my mind spontaneously, maybe I wrote round under sensory and then I realized that, don't cross things out. That's just like, it's not what you want to do because you're kind of interrupting what you're doing. If you notice something's in the wrong column, you go, oh, oops, round was supposed to be over here. Just draw a little arrow and that's sufficient. But now, okay, I'm starting to get dimension words. Let me go over to dimensions. Any other dimensions, densities, or motions that I'm getting spontaneously? Yep, I just got spiraling and I got flat and open. Okay, so now you see I have an information cluster for the sensory and the dimension descriptors that I'm getting spontaneously. Think of that as a cluster. Now that I've got a cluster, I'm going to now move my pen over into another column that I can begin prompting. And really think of any of these columns as lanes that you can, just by dint of moving your pen over to a different column, you're now going to start prompting for that type of information to come through. So if you want to check for emotions at the site, put your pen under the column of the EI. You want to check for tangibles at the site, put your pen under the tangible column. You want to check for ideas, for actions, for adjectives at the site, check under the I column, things like that. But I typically like to go directly to the tangible column, unless there's something really jumping out to me with AI. Like if I really feel there's some, like, man, I'm just feeling really upset for whatever reason, I can't, it's just in my space and I feel it, I need to declare that. And the way I would declare that, let's say I just check my AIs, put my pen under the AI column. What am I perceiving? I'm perceiving, actually not upset, I'm perceiving AI dash observant. And the AI dash is just a way to note that that's my reaction to what I'm experiencing, not anything at the site. So now you could go to the EI column right after you did that. But I like to go to T first, but just to kind of show you what that column looks like. Well, actually, here's what I'll do. I'll go to the T column. That's usually what I do after I check my AIs. And I go, okay, what am I dealing with here? What type of tangibles am I perceiving? And you want to start low level here. You don't want to start at it's a car, or it's a vehicle, or it's a balloon. Those are really high level descriptive words, and to be honest, nouns, which probably are almost guaranteed to be wrong if you try and do that this early in the stage 4. But a good place to start, if you're looking for a prompt to get you going, what I like to do is, well, I have a thing. And I'll actually just write it out to start the process. Thing. Well, what kind of thing? Well, I take the tip of my pen, put it underneath it, and I listen. Well, what kind of thing am I looking for? And I'm looking for low-level-ish type of data. Well, what kind of thing? It's an object. Okay. What kind of object is it? It is a heavy object. Heavy goes, you guessed it, over in the D column. It's a density. So I write heavy. But since I don't want any more dimensions, I'm just going to return right back to the next row under tangibles. Okay, what kind of object that's heavy is it? It's man-made. Man-made is an intangible idea. Man-made. It is a tool. Okay, tool, you can touch tools. Those are tangibles. Well, what kind of tool is it? It's a practical tool. That's an intangible idea because you can't touch it. What kind of practical tool is it? Again, you're just looking for spontaneous words that arise in your mind. It is a cutting tool. Okay. What kind of cutting tool? Sharp. Sharp would be a texture. Let's go back. Let's see if we can get a couple more under the T's. What kind of cutting sharp tool is it? It's like clipping. So again, clippers is what comes to mind. And now I've hit this imaginary 2/3 mark at the bottom of the stage 4 where I want to stop. And so here's where I'd end. Once I notice I start getting to the bottom of the page, I cut it off and I finish the stage 4. Now, obviously, if this is the end of your session, you would write end at the bottom of the page. That's how you finish this. But don't forget, one of the things you really want to, kind of a little bit of a yellow flag for me if I'm looking at a new viewer session and they're running stage 4, is that if this column over here under AOL is completely empty, and they got through all the sensory and all the dimension and even some of these low levels up to more detailed high level tangibles and intangibles, and they don't have any AOLs in there at all. They had no imagination the entire time. It's a little bit of a, borderline red flag, because it's very difficult to get through stage 4 oftentimes unless you're super focused without having some sort of imagination or analytical thinking pop up. And well, if you have that, you want to declare that on the page. And so always be making sure and double checking that you don't have this imagination sitting over here in your, peripheral vision that you're trying to ignore. Don't do that with AOLs. You want to write them on the page and declare them. All right, and so that concludes this introductory video to Stage 4. There's certainly a lot more that I can talk about on some of the nuances for running this stage, as well as some more in-depth details on the tangible and intangible column. I'll probably be doing that in an upcoming video for you guys, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a running head start on how to run this stage, how to begin including it in your own personal remote viewing work. If you are interested in working with a community that applies remote viewing, specifically something that I enjoy doing, which is applying it towards forecasting financial markets, because, hey, it's a practical way of applying the skill and making money doing so. But if you're interested in working with a group that is using remote viewing for that purpose, definitely check out my Facebook group, which is Remote Viewing Financial Markets with Brett Stewart. I'll provide a link for you down below. I'll also have the playlist for the rest of the series down below as well. So if you haven't watched the previous stage videos, which you should, go and watch those. And and keep an eye on this channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, like that video, and I will have more content for you guys in the near future. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.